Yay! Hi everyone! My name is Becky and welcome to Physical Story, a professional development webinar that explores nonverbal communication as a tool for student engagement in the classroom or virtual classroom, however it may be. First, which is this one, is all about awareness, considering nonverbal communication. We're going to talk all about body language. I think it's super helpful to start here, even if we do have some experience with body language or physical story already. Analysis is part 2. That's where we'll explore its place in the virtual classroom. And 3, in practice, useful tips and exercises. Though we are not on the same physical land, the tools that we are using right now, the internet, Zoom, my phone, are developed or continue to be developed on the traditional lands of Indigenous people. I'm the artistic director of physical theater company Broken Box Mime. We tell contemporary stories through a reinvented, reimagined version of French pantomime. And I teach this work at the New School at the College of Performing Arts. My classes there are physical storytelling, body languages, and a new class called The Whole Human Artist. So if this is on my resume, the stuff you might not be able to see. My body identity. I'm a white, cis female, 5'2" woman with a non-disabled body. I'm English speaking, and I have a non-standard mental health identity. My body education through adolescence, heterosexual, grew up in dance class, theater, and sports. I was not exposed to overt physical trauma, and I have a US American upbringing. Now I'll ask you to consider your perspective. I'll invite you now to pause this webinar, take a minute just to jot down some ideas to answer these questions. You're back. Okay, so now I ask, how would you describe this process? Was that easy for you? Was that tough? Are the answers fluid? Are they political? Is this a point of pride? Is this private information? Do you share it very often? Do you reflect on it regularly? And now the whole point of this, which is how will you now filter this work with me over the next 20 minutes or the next hour, depending on if you watch all 3. How will you filter that through your perspective and now understanding mine so that this can be very useful to you and relevant to your experience? Here we go, our thesis today. By learning about the existence of nonverbal communication, I will be better at both controlling its messaging, that's what comes from me, and also interpreting its messages, that's what comes from the student. The body is always speaking. We learn to speak body language and facial expressions and interact with nonverbal behavior from infancy through adulthood. Everyone has a different interaction with this. Everyone learns it at a different pace and in a different way. We'll talk more about that as we go along in this session, but we're always learning. However, we often lack the tools or formal structures of learning within which to describe, analyze, or make conscious this often subconscious form of communication. So let's talk about it today. Broken Box teaches 3 different parts to nonverbal communication. We teach this if we're teaching mime or body language itself. So part 1 is body shape. What shape does your body take? Are the shoulders up or down, the arms out or in, the stance open or closed, the hip in or out, the head back or forth? Facial expression, what am I doing with the 42 muscles in my face in order to add to that picture? And finally, physical behavior. Now let's bring those things into motion, into movement. Gestures, ways of moving through space, walking, running, sitting, jumping. What about interacting with objects in the world? All of that is physical behavior. So to begin, we're going to do a couple Zoom games. I'm going to get a couple of my pals, company members from Broken Box Mime to show you 2 different concepts when it relates to body shape. We're starting with body shape. You can track along with that little blue dot. Zoom game 1 will be about what meanings are we interpreting from a single body. I recommend that you can use this game right now to engage with the work and learn more about body language, or you can literally use this game in your classroom. Same with game number 2, which is now, what meanings are we interpreting from 2 bodies, from multiple bodies? That's where we go from a single storyteller into relationship. Okay, so here we go. Yay, here we are in the Zoom room, which you probably recognize from your online teaching right now. A big hearty welcome to Matt and Dinah, who are both members of Broken Box Mime.
Hello.
Howdy.
We are going to do a couple games now, as I said in the previous screen. Okay, so the first is called physical homonyms. The same way words can have 2 different meanings but sound the same, we're gonna look at body language the same way. So, physical shape, follow along. Dinah and Matt, put your legs wide apart and hands on your hips and your head kind of down and forward. Yeah, and scrunch your eyebrows a little bit. We're not talking about facial expression, but I can't help it. Put a little, yeah, that's great, perfect. Okay, so Matt, who might this be?
This is your boss, who is also an ogre, wondering where the reports are.
Exactly. Dinah, who else could this be?
This is a detective who's looking at evidence very closely.
Absolutely. Okay, perfect. And you guys can rest. What you could do with your classroom is just go around, see how many things you can come up with. Let's do one more. Arms crossed in front of you and looking up a little bit and head to the side and put a little, put your weight into one hip. Okay, who is this, Dinah?
This is the super confident friend of yours who isn't sure about your outfit.
Yeah, you've been that for me sometimes. I recognize this shape. Matt, who else could this be?
This is person who's taking a walk along the pier and just sort of contemplating their life choices.
Okay, great. You guys can rest. What we can do, not only did I want to show everyone this game because you can see how coded our body language is, but also it's a great game to play with kids, and they can then choose, you know, I want to move my elbow like this and like that. Okay, who are we now? Or this is now a ski slope. You know, you can go out to abstract or be very very naturalistic in this kind of exploration. Number 2 is called statue tag. I love this one. Broken Box teaches this at essentially every workshop we do. For this, I'm going to turn off my camera so that we just have Dinah and Matt on the screen. And if you're doing this in the classroom with your students, you can have them all turn off their camera and hide the self view. And that would do the same thing. You would be able to get 2 students on the screen. Okay, stop camera and hide self view. Now, Matt, choose a pose, any pose.
Okay.
And now Dinah, imagining you're in the same scene with Matt, pick a pose yourself. Gorgeous. Now, Matt, you pick a new pose, changing the scene as much as possible. And Dinah, same thing. Change the scene as much as you can with a new pose. Matt, your turn. Wonderful. Dinah? And let's do one more, Matt. Excellent. You guys can rest. Perfect, perfect. What we wanted to do here is explore how the mind makes a story out of anything. And just like before, we're looking at one body shape, now we're starting to interpret relationship. We're back, yay! Okay, so now that we've looked at body shape, let's move on to the second part, facial expression. Let's do a quick deep dive into faces. All right, so folks who study facial expression like to put it into 4 different categories, sometimes more, sometimes less. We're going to do 4 today. The first is emotional states, showing happiness, sadness. We'll get a little more into that in a moment. The second is cognitive states. So how do I show on my face what my mind is experiencing. If I'm wondering, daydreaming might be a facial expression. If I'm seeking, trying to figure out an answer, that's another cognitive state. Another one might be boredom. Nothing's going on in my brain. Boredom might overlap also with energetic or physical states. Tired is an energetic state. Alert, ready, engaged, energetic state. And then there are behaviors. So if I am sneaking, might be a behavior, or flirtation might be a behavior on the face. So here are our 4 buckets for facial expressions, and let's get into emotional state. So warm up that gorgeous Shayna Punnam, and we're gonna look at all the different 6 emotional states. It has been argued with lots of research that these 6 emotional states can be translated across culture and across geographical background. So wherever you come from, whatever language you speak, these 6 emotional states are consistent with the human experience. You might also recognize them from Inside Out. Fantastic film. Kids love to mention that when I teach this. Okay, so now I'm going to go through it with you and describe what's happening with the 42 muscles of the face. The first is happy. We talked about it before. The mouth smiles, the teeth show, and the corners of the mouth come up. Also, underneath the eyes, the muscles come up into happiness. Happy. The second is sad. Now we'll frown, the corners of the mouth come down, and the eyebrows come together and up. Very good. And now the third is anger. So our eyes squint, and our eyebrows are also clenched together, but they come down, yes? And sometimes the teeth are showing a little bit. Anger. The face also tends to tilt down, although that doesn't, you can argue if facial, if the facial angle and on the neck, the head angle is facial expression or not, but let's go with it. Let's say the face comes down, the chin comes down, and we have some anger. Now fear is number 4. Fear, if we are going to include the head and the neck, will move back. The mouth is open again, and the eyes come up like in sadness, but instead of the eyes being relaxed here, they're as wide as they can be. And that's fear. And 5th is surprise. The mouth is open, the eyebrows are up, and the eyes are wide. Kids tend to go like this for surprise, but it could also be a bad surprise or a scary surprise. So we look at this expression in complete neutral, but the emotional state is surprise. And finally, disgust, you guessed it. Okay, so disgust is the only one that uses the outside of the nose here. Ugh, yeah, outside of the nose, and the eyebrows usually come down. Like in anger, the eyebrows stay there, but the nose comes up. Ugh, PU. Kids love that one too. It's great to go through these with kids, especially with the physical description of what each one is. Some kids are better than others for various reasons we'll talk about later at understanding body language. So if you compare these facial expressions with neutral, non-judgmental language, the way I just did, it's a physical thing, the nose comes up. You're not saying, ew, it's gross, show me it's gross. You're saying, ew, it's gross. For that, the nose will come up. Now, if we go into the physical description of this, we make it inclusive for all students to understand and be able to follow along and not assume that they each get what these expressions are. Okay, so now I ask, if facial expressions are the words, how do we add dynamics? What is the punctuation, the font, the sizing, the bold, the italics, or subtext? For example, if I have an inquisitive look like this, which I would say is a cognitive state of wondering or questioning. If I turn my head to the side like this, I'm asking a question openly. If I have the same confused and I turn my head to the side this way, suddenly it is suspicion. And there are lots of patterns like that. When the body turns away, you're reserving something for yourself. Same thing happens with smiles. Same thing happens with all these expressions. So the angle of the head and the neck, the size of the smile, and then when we bring movement into it, these are just the 6 core emotional states, one of those 4 buckets. Imagine spreading out to all the possibilities of what just the face can say. Now we're going to get into a little bit of theory. If this is not your bag, feel free to move forward, but I love this stuff. Paul Ekman is one of the founding fathers of facial expression. fathers. There are mothers too, but in this time in 1975, there were probably more fathers than mothers because of the patriarchy. So here we are, Paul Ekman, he wrote Unmasking the Face, and he says that the face shows how we feel, and the body shows how we are dealing with that emotion. I love this idea because if I am shaking, holding myself and shaking my body like this, I'm a student in your classroom, right? And I'm sad. You can tell on my face that I'm sad. It's giving you that big word. And the body is saying how I'm dealing with that emotion. I'm trying to hold it in and soothe myself, perhaps, with this rocking motion. Now I can do the same rocking motion and switch the sadness to happiness. Now I'm so excited. The emotion is totally different, but the way I'm handling it is the same. I'm trying to soothe myself, calm myself down, and hold it in because I'm so excited. So the final part of our work today is an invitation to physical engagement. We're going to go to that third part. We have body shape, facial expression, now body language. And I like to say this, and all of Broken Box when we do teaching likes to say this. Shout out to our creative and education director, Tasha Milkman, who wrote this originally. We like to say to the students, we acknowledge that everyone's body is different. You're invited to engage however feels right for your body today. Again, this is in the spirit of inclusion and making sure that all students know that whether it's today or every day, if your body works differently than mine, you're still invited to engage, and I'm not going to get on your case if your arm doesn't go up in the air when I ask for your arm in the air. Here we are, physical behavior. We're going to jump into the Zoom game again. Woohoo! Okay, here we come, Broken Box. We're going to look at the finger. What can we say with just one finger? Another great game to play with kids. Come on and join us. Everyone bring up one finger. And we will go around the circle trying to come up with as many gestures as we can think of with just one finger. And actually, after one person does the gesture, let's all do it together, okay? I'll start. Come here, you. Let's all do it. Excellent. Matt?
Shh.
Dinah?
Wait.
Crazy.
Yeah, can we get the check?
Oh, good. Get over here right now.
Hmm.
Oh, the mustache guy. Mm-mm.
Aha!
Aha.
Think about it.
Ugh. Good.
Oh, you.
Oh, little cutie. Oh, you're so sweet. Any last ones? Good one. You're done for. Okay, great. And you can keep going with your students for as long as you can last. And the takeaway here is that if that's what you can do with one finger, imagine the wealth of language that you can express with your entire body. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Dinah. What are the possible obstacles to nonverbal communication? What might lead to misunderstandings? So take a pause and write down as many as you can think of. How many obstacles can you think of to nonverbal communication? You're back. Okay, here are all the ones I came up with. Take a look at this and see if you thought of as many as I thought of, or some that I didn't think of. Email me, I would love to know. A couple to point out here, autism and neurodiversity. This is a large field of study, how to understand, teach, engage with body language with folks who are neurodiverse. We're going to talk a little bit about it and have already as we go through our webinar, but if you're interested in this in particular, feel free to email me and I can try to point you in the right direction for more resources. Okay, here we are at the closing reflection. How might this awareness of body language inform my teaching? If you're taking notes, write down a couple sentences. It's nice to process where you are now because next webinar, we'll look at integrating all of this into lesson planning. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.